of that trans kid from the National Geographic cover.
I saw her tweeting, but I don't even know who the fuck she is. Like,
She's
was
in
this
the
even an
obviously in the
issue?
attention whore. Yeah, no. What happened is in 2016, National Geographic put out a horrific cover that said something like the gender revolution, and it was a picture of like a 9-year-old, 8-year-old boy in drag with like pink hair, and it was ghastly. It was like upsetting, stomach churning, especially in 2016. People aren't used to seeing this. Um, so they got talked about on the thread or on the forum, and it's like an 8-page thread, mostly about the actual issue, not the boy in particular. But they find his Facebook, his mom's Facebook, because his mom is aggressively pushing this kid out there to get on the fucking cover of National Geographic. So she's got a huge fingerprint, and then she comes out years later and says, "I was also doxxed. My 9-year-old was doxxed by Kiwi Farms. Like, we didn't fucking dox him. You're the one that put him on National Geographic, bro." Uh,
You went on the press tour. Do you kind of, the feeling I get with a lot of this trans shit and the fad that it's become? It feels like it's become like the evolution or the second step of pageant moms. It really does. Like, instead of, like, taking my 4-year-old daughter and I don't know, putting 48 pounds of makeup on her and making her tap dance in front of a panel of judges, I'm going to take my son and put a dress on him, and that'll get me more attention.
there is that, and it's frustrating because you want to put like a nice ribbon on it and say this is the core issue and this is the way to cut the Gordian knot. But the more fascinating and unfortunate aspect of the trans shit is that it's very multifaceted. There's a lot of different interests at play that are completely different but coincidentally align. And you see this with like the takedown of the forum, is that you have people who don't communicate with each other but who find themselves on the same page because they benefit in their own ways from having the site taken down. And with the trans stuff, you have pageant moms, you have people, single moms who like have this fatherless boy and they want a girl or they want special attention. They want to be the mom at the PTA saying, "My daughter is trans and we need gender affirming blah 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 at our school." Like, that's what they live for because they don't have a fucking hobby. You have those people. You have people who are genuinely just sick, disgusting perverts who want to walk around in a dress and jerk off in the women's restroom. And then you have people like Keffels, who I think is just like a misogynist. Like, they put out tweets and saying like being trans to me isn't about imitating women; it's about being better than women. So, and there's more to. And then the global interest. I think that to the corporation apparatus, to the government, the trans person is the ideal outcome of what the left would call the end stage capitalism. You have people who are predominantly white from middle and upper class homes who are cutting off their own dicks and becoming infertile. And then their life is a menagerie of consumer interest, wanting to see themselves represented in their consumer interest, buying pharmaceuticals to maintain their pain levels and to maintain their estrogen. And then, to replace them as they get older, you have to import labor from third world countries. And then that perpetuates the cycle of completely destroying the makeup, the demographics of the United States. I think that's the top down interest. But then you have all these useful idiots who have narcissistic personalities who are trying to enrich themselves either monetarily or sexually gratify themselves or get some other kind of attention from it. It's a rat king. It's one of the terms that we used to describe it years ago. It's a very bizarre phenomena. It's not just that they're trying to get rid of. They're looking at very briefly. On the internet, there used to be a private company in the United States called ICANN, the Internet Consortium of Assigned Names and Numbers. ICANN was taken by Obama and given to the United Nations, so now it's an international organization.
That was a mistake.
That was a huge fucking mistake, one that we will definitely see repercussions for in the coming decades. It was safer in the United States. Very deliberate, very smart. If you were like intentionally trying to fuck everything up, moving ICANN out of the U.S. was a brilliant move. If I was Satan and I was trying to fuck everything up, that's exactly what I would say to do. So ICANN distributes IP addresses to the 5 different companies called RIRs, Regional Internet Registries. There are 5 of them. There's one in the U.S. for North America, there's one in South America, one in Africa, one for Europe, and one for Asia and the Middle East. I have one in APNIC, which is Asia Pacific, and my IPs come from APNIC. APNIC is based out of Australia. Australia, after Christchurch, passed internet regulation and censorship. So now Liz Fong Jones, who I think is Chinese Australian, is trying to get APNIC to get rid of my IPs, basically. This has never happened in the history of the internet. There has never been a political censorship
How
of resource
how
allocations.
how dead in the water? I know you fought with like hosting and server space and DDoS protection, but if they pull that off, right, and they pull your IPs, how dead in the water are you? Does that really fuck you? Is that like a final death knell kind of thing?
No. If that happens, I will move it. Basically, I I have a layered network on 10 different companies. If I lose my IPs, I simply have to hide the Kiwi farms, and actually having my own resources is a benefit in some ways and a detriment in others, because now that people know where my networks are, they can probe them, they can attack them. If I had to hide my things again, then it would be more resilient to DDoS attacks. However, the upside of having my resources is that I can counteroffense. Basically, I can set new things up on IPs, I can fortify my network, I can have multiple ISPs, I can have DDoS filters on the network level, I can do more. But if I was forced to hide, I would still be able to keep the site up.
See, what I find fascinating about this, especially watching people who've been cheerleading this on the destruction of the site, is it feels like a proxy for what's coming, right? We're watching this obviously between Keffels and Kiwi, but the bigger picture to me is 5 years from now, 10 years from now, what if it's some kind of actual insurrection against the government? What if there's some crazy shit going on and people are trying to keep a website up to get information out? They're watching essentially what's being done to you is going to be done in that instance. And it's weird watching, the people that I've seen before talk about internet freedom and the right to speak and have a place to go, cheerlead this shit on because it baffles me that they don't see that you know later on this is going to be used against sites that they would probably want up, or that might serve some kind of a benefit. Like, I mean, they're chasing you around the internet all over the world trying to rip you apart, and they're going after everything that's connected to you in a way to make that happen. And it's like this cat and mouse game of can you escape it? And if you can't, that's got a really bad connotations for what the future of the internet's going to look like. Because what are people going to do? Have wireless mesh nets? You know what I mean? They're going to run a fucking second internet from the back of their truck driving around the countryside.
Ham radios, probably.
Just copy 10.4. What was that URL? It's going to be good.
The Onion Tor will probably be resilient. However, the government basically, in the same way that I have contingencies for everything, the government also has things that they know how to take down that they don't do very often because they don't want
Sure.
them fixed. My personal conspiracy theory is DDoS attacks are such a universal problem that if they wanted to fix them, they probably could. I bet you that there is a way right now that could be set up in a week where if you are under a DDoS attack, you could communicate to the internet backbones, of which there's like only like 7 internet like tier 1 providers in the world, and say I'm being attacked. This is my source, and this is the destination of the attack. And I bet you that it would be possible to coordinate with companies for free, not resource intensive at all, to end DDoS as a threat. However, I think that the DDoS attack is so simple and so useful to the government that they intentionally do not provide the service, and they have been asked by the government not to provide the service. And I think that's true with other things as well. That they know how to fix, and they choose not to. DDoS attacks have been around for 30 fucking years. They've always been there, and they for sure know how to fix it by now.
Yeah, I wouldn't doubt it. I'm sure there's a lot of shit they could patch up and take care of that they never do. I mean, you're talking about at least with the U.S. government that knows about like just 0-day exploits that they'll let sit there because it might be beneficial a year from then. I mean, with all the NSA shit and
Well, here's a
Homeland
fun story
Security
about
stuff.
that. There was a pedophile who was arrested, who was identified as exchanging child pornography on tour. The lawyer for the pedophile asked, I want to know how you identified him. We need proof. Before we take any plea deal or take this to court, I need to know what you did to identify my client as the person who transmitted this information over Tor, an encrypted network. And they said, we are not going to disclose that, so the charges are dropped. And he walked away. So whatever the fuck they had that was working, It was so important to them that they would have let literally anything walk so that they can continue to do espionage. I think that was patched eventually. They figured out what that was, but our government is evil. Our government is pure evil, run by very like like most people listening to this will probably be familiar with the Christian fucking his mom thing. One of the people that he was talking to at the time was Isabella Yonka. Isabella Yonka is the daughter of an ex-CIA contractor named Michael Yonka. If you Google Michael Yonka Cloudflare, you'll find a video of the father of the woman that was talking to Chris while he was raping his mother, sitting next to Matthew Prince talking about how the internet needs more censorship. And considering that Isabella Yonka had a like 3,000 page long thread on the Kiwi Farms, it really does raise some fucking eyebrows about what influence comes from where. I don't think that Michael Yonk is a part of Keffel thing at all. I think that the in the time that it took for the Kiwi Farms to lose Cloudflare, there was that statement by Matthew Prince about their policies and how they handle abuse and yada yada and their commitment to free speech, and that was on Thursday. And then that Saturday, 2 days later, on a 3-day weekend, it was Labor Day weekend, he drops the Kiwi Farms and puts out this much more rushed, shitty statement that seems like panicked, and saying like, this site is the worst site that we've ever seen. We're dropping it right now. It's an imminent threat to human life. We've contacted law enforcement already because it's such a big deal. And I've not received any communique from any law enforcement anywhere regarding any imminent threat to human life. So he lied, and he lied in a way that I can't sue him for, but he lied to appease his shareholders, probably because something happened. Either his payment processors threatened him, his board of directors threatened him with having him being forced to resign from CEO position, or someone like Michael Yonka got to him in his ear and said, you need to find a way to drop this site. And what is extremely pissy about that is that he said it was the worst site he's ever seen. It was an easier decision to make than the Daily Stormer or 8chan. And right now on his site are websites dedicated to drilling holes into the skulls of monkeys that proudly hosted by Cloudflare. ISIS websites proudly hosted by Cloudflare. DDoS protection, the works, for $200 a month, and it's a joke. It's a bad joke, but it's going to go right over people's head, unless
Do
they.
you think part of the do you think part of the problem, and I've always kind of wondered this, on how people like, let's say, Keffels or that group would have any kind of reach at all, is that the ones most drawn into this shit, or at least I guess the first ones most drawn into it, because now it's kind of a fad with younger kids, came from highly affluent families. It seemed like they were coming from families that were rich or well connected, and so they had the money and time to give into this kind of bizarre, fetishistic, I'm going to become a
Oh, you
woman
mean like
thing.
Jazz Jennings? Jazz Jennings was
Yeah,
one of the first one.
yeah, but I'm talking about people like uh, what is it? Oh, I guess what I'm getting at is I don't see this having started with kids living in the ghetto, right? Poor people.
No,
I see this having started with kids that went to the really nice college because mom and dad have a fucking six-figure job, because mom or dad work with the government or at a NGO or whatever. And do you think that these people have undue influence because of that? Because, they're midway through their journey of tying a noose around their neck. So they see Kiwi Farms and this big fight happen, and they're like, we need to make that go away. And so their parents or people that know their parents have a voice that can reach somebody like Prince on his 3-day weekend and be like, you need to take this down.
yeah, I mean, I'm sure that a lot of people who are involved in complaining on Twitter and shit are opportunistic. They've been quiet for years because they know that it's not a good idea to draw attention to it because the site gets more views to their threads if they talk about it. But now they see this as like the last chance to take down the site. So